The plains that afternoon were quiet, too quiet for late summer. Usually the wind dragged its fingers through the tall grass, rattling the dry stalks like bones in a drum circle. But that day, even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Heat shimmered above the ground, bending the horizon into a wavering line. The sky, a wide, cloudless blue, glared down like a watchful eye. And in the middle of that silent, sun-baked emptiness, she stood between two twisted trees. The trees were the only shade for miles, gnarled mesquite that had probably been growing since the first settlers crossed those plains. Their branches clawed toward the sky, scraggly and stubborn. Between them, a woman stood with her hands bound, her breath shaky but steady. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't crying. She had passed beyond fear hours ago and settled into a kind of stillness, like someone listening for footsteps that refused to come. Her name was Maren Hale, and she had been left there by 3 men who had mistaken cruelty for courage. They had tried to scare her into revealing where her brother had gone. They had tried threats and lies and cold laughter. When she refused to budge, they left her in the open, telling her they'd return before sunset to try again. Maren didn't know if that meant another round of threats, or something worse. She tested the ropes on her wrists again, but the cords were tight and scratchy, scraping her skin raw. She tugged once, twice, then stopped. If she pulled too hard, she might only make the knots tighter. She leaned her head back against the tree behind her and stared at the horizon, trying not to think about the shape the sun was taking as it lowered. It was late afternoon now. The men had been gone nearly 2 hours, and she was trying not to hope for a miracle. Far across the plains, a lone rider paced at an easy walk. The cowboy's coat was dusted in pale earth, the color of a road well traveled. His hat was pulled low, shadowing most of his face except for a jawline that looked like it had never bent for trouble. He didn't look like much at first glance. Weathered boots, a plain shirt, no badge or bold colors. He moved like a man used to being overlooked. But his eyes scanned the land with a quiet, practiced certainty. The horse beneath him, steady, sure-footed, walked with a patient rhythm. They hadn't stopped moving for hours. The cowboy wasn't rushing, but he wasn't wandering either. He followed faint signs. The faint impression of wagon wheels, a broken branch, a patch of grass flattened wrong. Clues most men would miss. He wasn't hunting someone. He was tracking trouble. A small puff of dust caught his eye, rising in the distance like smoke from an invisible fire. He squinted slightly. No wind. That dust meant movement. Someone struggling, or someone left where they shouldn't be. His horse felt him shift and slowed to a stop. The cowboy lifted his head, watching the horizon. The plains had a way of telling stories to those who listened. And right now they were whispering something urgent. "Let's go," he murmured. He nudged the horse forward. By the time Maren saw the faint shape approaching, she told herself not to believe it. Heat could do tricks, turn a rock into a rider, a shadow into salvation. She blinked against the glare. The shape grew. It moved steadily, unhurried. Horse, definitely a horse. And a man. She swallowed. A hard knot of fear tightened in her chest. What if it's them again? But this rider moved differently. Those men rode like thunder, fast, loud, arrogant. This one rode like a quiet river, calm, deliberate, flowing toward something only he could see. When he finally drew close enough for her to see the outline of his coat, Maren felt something warm flicker in her chest, something she hadn't allowed herself since the men had dragged her out here. Oh. The cowboy stopped several yards away, observing the ropes, the trees, the way she held herself upright but tired. "Afternoon," he said gently, lifting his hat just enough for her to see his eyes. They were clear and steady. "Looks like you could use a hand." Maren let out a ragged breath. You shouldn't get involved," she warned. "They said they'd be back." "I reckon they will," the cowboy replied, swinging off his horse with slow, measured ease. "But you look like you'd prefer to be untied before they show up." He approached without rushing. His presence was calm, like standing next to someone who already knew how this was going to end and wasn't worried about it. Maren watched him reach for the ropes, his movements precise and controlled. He untied her carefully, making sure not to scrape her wrists more than they already were. "You hurt anywhere?" he asked. "No," she said quietly. "Just shaken." "That's normal," he answered. "Means you're still thinking straight." She studied him, trying to piece together why someone like him would be riding this direction, why he would stop for a stranger. "Why are you here at all?" she asked. He glanced at the scattered footprints around the trees. Saw signs of a struggle miles back. Figured someone might need some looking after. He didn't mention the anger he had swallowed when he saw the tracks of 3 men circling her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scowl. He simply filed that anger away behind calm eyes. Because when this cowboy got angry, he got quiet. The wind shifted. Both of them heard the sound at the same moment. Hoofbeats, 3 sets, approaching fast. Maren's breath hitched. "They're coming back." The cowboy nodded once. "Thought so." He helped her step behind him where the shade fell. He didn't pull a weapon or make a show of preparing for a confrontation. Instead, he planted his boots in the dirt, straightened his coat, and waited. The 3 men rode up with loud confidence. They laughed when they saw the cowboy and slowed their horses. The leader, broad-shouldered with a scar running from ear to jaw, leaned forward. "Well now," he drawled, "looks like somebody found our stray." The cowboy didn't answer right away. He just tilted his head slightly, studying the men like they were dust storms rolling in the wrong direction. "You left her out here," he said evenly. "Tied up, scared. That stops today." The men exchanged looks of amusement. "And who are you to say so?" the leader asked. The cowboy didn't blink. "A man who's telling you, plain and simple, to think real hard about your next step." The leader laughed, a harsh sound. "And if we don't?" The cowboy's voice didn't rise. "It didn't need to. Then you'll find out why folks say trouble don't stick around when I show up." There was a shift in the air. The confidence in the men's posture wavered. Just a flicker, like they felt the ground tilt beneath them and weren't sure why. "You talk big for someone standing alone," the leader said. "I'm not alone," the cowboy replied, glancing back at Maren. "And she's walking away from here, without a mark more on her." A long moment passed. The men stared at him. He stared back, unblinking. Silence stretched, then snapped. The leader clicked his tongue. "Boys." But one of the other men grabbed his arm. "He ain't bluffin', Cole," he muttered. "Look at him." Cole hesitated. That hesitation cost him his bravado. The cowboy stepped forward just half a pace. Nothing dramatic, nothing threatening. Just enough to make his point. "Leave her be," he said quietly. "Turn around. Ride the other way. Don't look back." The men exchanged uncertain glances. Something about the cowboy, calm as a resting storm, made them reconsider a fight they thought they wanted.